I really shouldn't be this agitated on a Monday morning. But hey ho, Celtic know how to get me up for the new week with some brand new interim results. We knew we'd been kind of expecting this for a little bit of time, the interim financial results up to the end of 2020. Celtic released them early on Monday. The finances were not great, probably not quite as bad as many expected given what the club have gone through with COVID over the last year. But it was more what accompanied the financial results that people were most interested in. We got a statement from Ian Bankier. It was more what it didn't say than what it did. I think that said the most in a funny way. In this video, we're going to touch on all of the financial figures briefly. Then we're going to move on to Ian Bankier's statement. I'll round up what he had to say, not word for word, but just picking out some of the best bits or the worst bits, and then I'll give my thoughts. So Celtic started their financial results with operational highlights, and much to the frustration of many Celtic supporters, for some reason, one of the highlights was that we're currently second in the Scottish Premiership. Hey ho, what can you do? They also included other things like winning the quadruple treble and ending a decade of dominance, which I thought was a kind of strange thing to say given that it was just recent highlights as opposed to a whole decade. And maybe that is just the end of our dominance completely. But that's what Celtic put. In terms of the actual figures, this is what the club had to say. Revenue was down by 23.7% to 40.7 million. Last year, by contrast, it was 53.3 million. Loss before tax of 5.9 million now in comparison to last year where we had a profit of 24.4 million. Seems a pretty big loss there. And net cash in the bank of 19.7 million. This time last year that was 32.9 million. It's not really surprising given COVID, the fact that Celtic haven't had a paying supporter through the Parkhead gates in 11 months. And also that we kept on to all of our best players in the summer. The year before, we sold Kieran Tierney for 25 million. We could have done the same with Odsonne Edouard in the summer. We chose not to. We kept on to the likes of Christopher Ajer, probably to the team's detriment and the club's financial detriment. But that's what happened. Those are the two main reasons for these pretty depressing, bleak figures. Ian Bankier touches on both of them as the key reasons, COVID and keeping on to our players. Although, as I reiterate, I don't think the figures are maybe quite as bad as a lot of Celtic fans would have expected, certainly in comparison to our rivals across the city. They're not quite as bad. Right, on to Ian Bankier's statement. I'm not going to read it out word for word because, quite frankly, I've got better things to do in my life and you probably have better things to do with your life too. I'll give you a too long, didn't read kind of version because it had that feel to the statement. He did touch on some interesting things that it's worth pointing out though, so I will do that. Surprise, surprise, Celtic are blaming COVID for this shambles of a season. I predicted it months ago. I wasn't the only one. Everyone with half a brain cell could see that Celtic were going to do this. Ian Bankier refers to the European qualifiers as challenging single-leg knockout ties that were a result of the restricted football environment. It's just company jargon, but what he's saying effectively, reading between the lines, is that it was a pretty impossible task to qualify for the Champions League this season anyway because, you know, COVID. So it's COVID's fault, everyone. Blame COVID. One chunk of his statement I did want to read out just to give you a bit of an indication of the tone is the following. The prolonged summer transfer window, the impact of COVID-19 and, crucially, the loss of our passionate support at matches have undoubtedly had a damaging effect on our performance levels in domestic and European competitions, but we recognise that our performance has not been good enough. Amidst this challenging environment, however, we secured victory in the postponed 2019-2020 Scottish Cup final to deliver an incredible fourth consecutive treble, following on from securing our ninth consecutive league title. The scale of this achievement cannot be underplayed and should be a cause for pride and celebration for years to come. So one wee admission there that they know that's not been good enough this season, but that was about 5 or 6 words in 30-second long thing I just read out that was just making excuse after excuse, blame COVID, and then throw in the fact that this amazing achievement of 4 trebles in a row, almost as if supporters aren't quite getting it. Supporters are the ones who aren't quite understanding how good this achievement was amidst all the uncertainty of COVID, almost as if the club should be applauded for this season because we managed to beat Aberdeen and a championship side on penalties in the final to win this. Celtic fans know how historical a quadruple treble is. We knew it at the time and we will know it going forward, but for them to point this out as if this is the definition of our season and it's the main thing that will come from our season and it was the main target at the start of the season is just complete and utter nonsense from Ian Bankier and the Celtic board. Bankier also mentioned that Celtic are still working with authorities to try and get fans back to games as soon as possible, although he admitted there's a real uncertainty there. Yep, you would say so. And also he thanked Peter Lawwell for his work at the club, which is, doing a Neil Lennon, nothing short of outstanding. Not sure I would quite agree with all of that. He also mentioned Dominic Mackay and finally mentioned the support as well, thanking them for their continued support and loyalty over the last 12 months. So Celtic's website is working. The statements are coming out. They're able to type up statement. They've got that staff power. They've not all been furloughed. So why are we getting this but we're still waiting on our New Year review? It seems pretty strange. I know Celtic have an obligation to release these figures, and I know the statement is mainly built around the finances as opposed to the on-pitch stuff, but they are obviously linked, and it's just yet more evidence from my point of view that the club still don't get it. They just still are so out of touch with what is actually happening this season, and to use COVID as the main reason for this season being terrible is just so out of touch with reality. We are not the only club in Scotland that have been affected by COVID-19. I'm just trying to think. I'm sure every club in Scotland has actually been affected. I don't think any other club has managed to avoid the effects of COVID-19. Some have had to lose players, furlough players. They've been much worse affected than Celtic have been. Yet, if you were reading this statement, you would think that these COVID problems are confined only to Celtic. Now, there was absolutely no mention of Neil Lennon in that statement from Ian Bankier, which I thought was pretty interesting. No mention of Neil Lennon, no mention of the manager at all. Bankier did reportedly promise a fair few Celtic fans via letters that he would be making an announcement, some sort of an update on the future of the manager alongside this financial report that the club released today. Maybe that's coming later on Monday. I don't want to go all out and say that it's not here because I may be made to look quite foolish. That's happened in the past. It happens quite a lot on this YouTube channel. But he did promise that, and in this statement anyway, there was absolutely no mention of Neil Lennon. And I think the tone of this statement suggests that even if we do get a mention of Neil Lennon, a Neil Lennon statement later on Monday or later in the week, it's certainly not going to be saying that Neil Lennon's going to be departing the club anytime soon. I think at the very least Neil Lennon is going to be in charge till the end of the season. My fears are growing that Neil Lennon could actually be here next season. I'm trying to keep those down because it's not good for anyone to have those thoughts. But when you see the club taking so little responsibility for how this season has gone and being in so much denial about the true reasons for why this season has gone so badly, then it just gives you the feeling that they're going to stick by Neil Lennon next season and give him a proper season where COVID isn't going to have as much of an impact on proceedings. So, yeah, not the ideal start to the week, everyone, but at least we'll get some sort of communication from the club. It's better than the walls of silence and the happy birthdays and the on this days that we've been getting from the Twitter over the last wee while. Let us know below what you thought of Celtic's statement. What do you think we'll see in the coming hours, the coming days from the club, if anything? Remember to subscribe to the channel and we'll speak to you very soon.